So, welcome back to a channel update video, of which the last one, I believe, was just before the turn of the new year, so it has actually been a little while since we did one of these, and for those of you who haven't seen one before, which I imagine would be relatively few people who would be willing to click on the channel update videos anyway, I tend to do these in a relatively non-scripted fashion. There are really just a few talking points that I will then go off and really ramble about a little bit, to be honest with you, because, you know, that's simply the nature of things when you don't have a script. But I do feel as though there are some things worth talking about. I mean, I've been talking about doing a channel update at the end of quite a few of the battle replays over the last few weeks, and I've been really waiting for some of the situations to develop in some ways, and while I'm still not entirely sure on some of them, I do feel as though it's worth talking about now. And by the time there's a follow-up live stream, which I will probably be doing at some point during May, probably fairly early on in May, to be honest with you, hopefully by then at least some of these points will be a little bit clearer and more clarified, and I will be able to let people know what's going to be happening in a more concrete fashion, at least with regards to myself, because there are a few topics that I want to talk about. One is my personal situation with regards to my current employment and what I'm potentially going to be doing next, which may be kicking in later on in the year. The second thing is about REFORGED itself, which is actually something that I initially, when I was putting together this channel update, I wasn't going to have anything about REFORGED as a mod itself, but I do feel as though there are a couple of things I do need to talk about with regards to the overall mod, because, you know, my channel's, you know, health essentially is intrinsically linked to Third Age Reforged, because it is by far and away the most dominant thing I put up on my channel, and it's also the thing that people tend to want to see from me the most, so it does behoove me to point a few things out with regards to Reforged. And then finally we're going to a bit of a combination of the two, really, just, you know, my personal feelings on what the channel's going to be doing, you know, and my, you know, personal level of enjoyment, which has fluctuated a little bit over the course of the last few months. But we shall start off with, you know, what may be happening later on in the year, and that may be that I, you know, enter into doing a PhD program. It's not certain yet by any means, but I would say there's probably around a 60-65% chance that from here I get into the program that I've applied to. I've actually already been accepted onto the program. It's just really a case of funding, which is a little bit more of a trickier situation, shall we say, especially given the higher education system in the United Kingdom being what it is. But there's a pretty decent chance that this is what I end up going into. Now, a PhD, I'm not foolish, is a pretty intense thing to get yourself into, but as I've mentioned in the past, my current job as a hydrographic surveyor is probably one of the worst you could have while trying to maintain a YouTube channel. And that's because intermittently I can be away for anywhere from relatively short to pretty extended periods of time, where obviously I cannot then record, upload or maintain my channel in any real way, to be honest. And it's proven to be awkward. I mean, I've managed to keep up my current schedule. Last summer I was thinking I would have to reduce it temporarily. I ended up not having to do that, but it was a close run thing. It's been difficult to keep my channel ticking over in the way that that I want to, by doing 2 videos a week. And I feel as though I mean, we'll get on to, you know, my personal enjoyment about things later, because, you know, this is obviously a big part of it, but yeah, it's not a great job to have when you want to maintain the channel as well, because essentially, in order to potentially absorb anywhere up to 3 weeks of being away, I always need to record as far in advance as I possibly can, and then when I have to go away on site and, you know, all of these reserve videos do their job and keep my channel going, I then have to, you know, record in huge batches once again to be able to catch back up to the point where I've got that 3 weeks in reserve, and it's not the best way of doing things, because it has impacted how I enjoy things on the channel. But I can't take a step back from YouTube either, because I want to keep the channel going in the event that I do get into the program that I've applied to, and having this as a sort of secondary thing which I can not only get a little bit of extra money from, but also I'm able to go back to trying to expand the channel a little bit more, which is something I've been completely unable to do really for the past year at this point, which is really unfortunate because, again, the time is just not there. And with a PhD, while it is a very intense thing, anyone who's been at university, regardless of what they've done, whether it be a doctorate or whether it be a bachelor's or master's degree, you have a little bit more control over when and how you do things, so you can allocate your time much more freely, whereas as it is at the moment, I have virtually no control over that. During a normal working week, it's fine. It's just like any other job where people work Monday to Friday, basically, and I can do things just fine. But intermittently being away has proven to be a problem. Now, obviously, there's more to my decision of going into a PhD than just the health of my channel. I'm not that much of a fool. But I'm just talking about this from the channel's perspective, because that's really the only thing that's relevant here. Of course, I will enjoy my life a lot more going into this program, because it is fairly ideal for where I want to be going. But from the channel's perspective, it should also be a good thing. I mean, at the very least, at worst for the channel, it would just be a case of maintaining as I am at the moment. Only I'll be enjoying it as significantly more, because I'll be able to allocate my time and blocks of time to actually recording much more freely than I can at the moment. So that would really be the worst case scenario in the event that I do manage to get into the program that I'm trying to apply for. Yeah, and that's really what the situation could be going on later into the year. Now, as far as the timetable would be, if this ends up happening, I would be starting this, I think, literally on the 1st of October. But of course I would be leaving my current position of employment before that, because you need to, obviously get things into place. So it's very likely that at some point in the summer I would be stepping away from my current job and getting things into place, ready to move to the institution that I may be going to. That would also leave me with maybe a little bit more free time over the summer to maybe do a couple of experimental things in terms of longer form content. We'll see. This is all very tentative, of course, because this sort of thing may fall through still, which is why I'm not talking about it with any sort of real authority, and why I've only put like a 60 to 65% chance of this actually happening. Irregardless, in the long term, I won't be staying in my current employment for too much longer past that anyway. I don't think there are other options on the table as well, but those I can't really talk about, because of course I have my current goal and I'll be trying to work towards that. If things don't work out, then we can talk about plan Bs. So, potentially good news for the channel there on the horizon, whether that be in a very minor or a more significant way. Hopefully we can start getting back to, later on in the year, getting into some of the stuff that I was doing before I moved away from my current job. So for those of you who remembered the live streams I did for Divide and Conquer, we might be able to go back to adding those into the schedule in addition to the 2 videos a week I'm currently doing, if things work out in the way that I'm hoping. Again, that's kind of the loose idea I have in my head at the moment, but hopefully things will work out. Obviously, as I mentioned, it's not just for the sake of the channel that I'm taking these steps. Obviously, there is a lot of other personal and satisfactory reasons that I want to be moving into this particular program, but that's not really relevant here. I mean, you're getting into the ins and outs of my life rather than the channel, and that's not really the sort of thing which is what you want to be hearing from a channel update like this. But we shall now move on to the second topic which I was going to talk about, which is Third Age Reforged itself. And this is something which has really come to light in the past month or so. And this is actually a little bit more of a cause for concern, to be honest with you, and that is, I don't think Reforged is as active as it was before. Just in terms of the games that are happening, which I'm aware of, and just in terms of the stuff that I'm getting sent and what I'm observing, I feel as though it's in a little bit of danger of stagnating. It may already be a little bit stagnant, to be honest with you, and that's a problem, because I mean, Reforged is the lifeblood of my channel, after all. Everything I just said with regards to, getting my content back into, the kind of form it was before, in terms of the amount that I'm uploading when, later on in the year, hopefully when I move into, my new program, kind of is all moot if Reforged itself is slowly grinding to a halt, which is kind of what I fear at this point. And I do feel as though a massive part of that, honestly, is the fact that there hasn't really been that much in the way of updates on the much vaunted next patch. And far be it from me to, pile pressure on the powers that be, but I feel as though it's kind of just an inevitability at this point that if the patch continues to spin its wheels in the mud, Reforged will ultimately slowly sputter out. And that's bad. That's bad for anyone who likes playing Reforged. And it's certainly bad for me because it means that my channel will essentially, halt in many ways. I think there are things I could move into, but my channel would struggle because Reforged is the main vector by which people actually view my stuff. So that is of a little bit of concern to me. Now, admittedly, my position in the community has always been a little bit odd in the sense that I'm nowhere near as active as I would like to be. Again, a large part of that is due to the fact that I simply do not have the free time to dedicate to this, considering that some of my free time already goes pretty heavily towards doing my Reforged content. So the last thing I want to do with the remaining iota of my spare time is yet more Reforged or Medieval 2 stuff in general. So, and considering, my position as a content creator and probably the one that does Reforged content the most, that isn't exactly ideal. So I know that I'm fully aware here that I may be part of the problem, and if I was a little bit more active, things maybe would be a little bit easier, both from my perspective and from just Reforged as a whole. But it is what it is for the time being, and it is a bit of a frustrating situation, to be honest. And everyone has their own lives to live. After all, we live in tumultuous times, shall we say? And there's a lot of things going on for everyone, whether it be work or other stuff. And the most prominent people in the Reforged community, developers and players, can't necessarily just devote all their time to Reforged to keep it ticking over. But it is just the situation that is at the moment. I don't know what the situation's going to develop like with regards to Reforged. I would hope that at some point as the year goes on, we do hear a little bit more on the next patch, because I think Reforged does need it at this point. I don't mention it too much in my replays because there's no point. There's no point talking about what might be happening in the future in the middle of a battle. But I think here it is worth just mentioning that, because if Reforged does start to fall away, then my channel has to basically completely reconsider what it's all about. Hopefully that doesn't happen. As I said, the amount of content that I'm actually being given by people has gone down. I mean, this does tend to fluctuate a little bit depending on what's happening, so that's not really a cause for concern at the moment. But we'll see. We'll see what the ebbs and flows on that front are like, and hopefully, again, by the time I do my live stream update in May, where we can talk about these topics a little bit more back and forth with chat, hopefully this will have a little bit more light shed onto it, in addition to the stuff that's happening personally for me. And all of this, of course, feeds into the final topic, which is sort of my personal enjoyment about, YouTube and doing it, which has decreased. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it does tend to increase and decrease depending on, mood and general feeling at the time. But as I said, the employment situation for me at the moment makes it very difficult to devote time to recording YouTube stuff in a way that would be enjoyable for me. I have to do it in great big chunks, which take up a massive part of what can be my weekend, and that can make you feel a little bit resentful, especially when you're not enjoying the week, and then you have to devote a whole day as well to something like this. And that's not how it needs to be. I need to be able to enjoy this in order to continue doing it. And it's not to the point where I'm thinking about stopping anytime soon. But it is the sort of thing that I do need to keep an eye on, because ultimately if I'm not enjoying it, then that will come through in the replays themselves as well. And then I'm ultimately pushing out a lower quality product onto the internet, and that is not what I want to be doing. That's really just the footnotes, to be honest with you, and that's just the situation. I mean, with all three of these things, they're all very changeable, and they're all very changeable in the short term as well. I feel as though there's a lot of permutations which can affect, and they're also going to affect one another, I think, in certain ways. So hopefully by the time we do the live stream in May, which will be a channel update, and hopefully we can combine it with doing something else as well, whether that be in Reforged or Silmarillion or even something else. Hopefully we can do something with regards to that. We shall see. But yeah, that was really just it. A little bit of a rambling channel update once again. I mean, they often tend to be when I talk about stuff like this, but again, I don't feel the need to really make a script when it comes to this. It's really just a case of, if there's information that should be shared, then I will do it in this form, because it's probably the best way to get across the information that I am, rather than posting up just a simple message on YouTube. I think a video form is probably the best way to do it, because, yeah. At any rate, I think for now that will do, and we shall pick this back up, like I said, in a live stream at some point in the month of May. By the time this one comes out, I think we will be sort of going into the later part of April, fairly close to Easter. I think also, just something else before we sign off, I'll be interested to see how the knockout tourney video does, because I think that'll be exactly 1 week before this one comes out. There should be the Lance Cavalry knockout tourney that I did. I mean, it's kind of a janky sort of way of doing something like that, but I'd be interested to see what people think about that, because it's stuff like faction overviews and top 10s and sort of more unit and faction based stuff that really got my channel going in the first place. Hasn't really been a part of the channel for a little while, because I've been, again, waiting for the next patch before I do stuff, because there's no point in doing faction overviews and the like until there's actually something significantly newer to talk about. But this is kind of the holdover for that. And if people want to see more of that, I mean, I probably will be recording another one beforehand anyway, so I think there will be the Archers version of that video that will probably come out anyway, because I'll be recording that before the Lance Cavalry one sees the light of day. So we'll see how those two do, and if it's something people want to see more of, then I'll continue to do it. And that will be something which can be folded into the regular content. So yeah, we'll see. Other than that, battle replays will continue as they will. I think the next replay we'll see after this one actually will be a Silmarillion one, which is the introduction of the Nalgrim, or the Dwarven faction, which again has been much talked about, and they're finally here. So we'll get to have a look at them. And yeah, like I said, we shall see what the future holds, because it's not entirely clear at the moment, given the factors that I've just mentioned. But hopefully soon we will have a bit more clarity. So yeah, I hope you found this somewhat informative, and I hope you'll join me for whatever is next.